Hello, YouTube subscribers, Patreon patrons, fans, followers, supporters, and generally anyone who happens to stumble across these videos. This is a sorry for that accent, terrible accent. This is Johnston Blackhorse, and this is just another video of my whole sketching process. And in the previous videos, we went over like the uh, producing these like really rough sketches, and in the more recent video I went ahead and like cleaned up these two sketches, made them cream the rabbit pieces, and for these next two I'm going to make them Sticks the Badger, and I'm gonna go ahead and just pull up my reference images and just make sure I'm on point with the character details and whatever. And let's see. So I guess with that we'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and put on a little bit of music so I can have something just kind of listen to off in the background. Whoa! Let's turn it down a little bit. Yeah, just something for me to just kind of tune in and tune out as I go through this process. Yeah, see what I can do about trying to talk more about the artsy side. But you know what? Like, I don't know if I could, if I should try to refrain from like talking about legal issues or not, because I haven't received any negative comments as of yet to like telling me like, hey man, why don't you just stick to just talking about the art, dude? Like I came here to learn how to draw and just like watch your in-depth process of how you make your art and your figures and such. No, I haven't received any comments such as that. So like I'm wondering if I should just stay the course and continue talking about like my personal opinions and just how, you know, through my experience, I believe that we are living in a pretty corrupted setup, and we're meant to ignore it in a sense. And just people at large are just like kept in somewhat of a state of distraction, so to speak, due to all the like sensationalized news and reality television. We're being distracted, or like the populace in mass is being distracted from like focusing on the main issues that are like somewhat turning this country into something that it was never meant to be. And after getting plucked out of the system and like put in prison, you're kind of in a state where you're on the outside looking in. Like even though you're held within like these prison walls or whatever, you get to look at society from like I guess a fishbowl perspective, if you will, and just like observe how society acts or like how it responds to certain stimuli, and what is like really being done to just somewhat dissuade the public's attention from really issues that should be pertinent to all Americans. But you get all these you're just fed like a lot of static in order to just like distract you from like the main issues and topics that we should be discussing. And I think through my whole, you know, the sex offender treatment therapy, like I'm just like constantly talking about these issues and topics and whatnot. And you know, like these sex offender treatment sessions aren't really Well, like I've already discussed it in previous videos where like my sex offender like treatment therapist like agrees with me that I don't need sex offender treatment therapy because I'm comfortable with my sexuality and who I am as an individual. And she is well aware that I'm not one of these predators or um, um, people who can't, I guess, keep their hands to themselves. Like for repeat offenders and like well, in more, I guess, actuality, like people who actually go about like being sexual predators and committing hands-on offenses, I can see how sex offender treatment could be beneficial to them. But for individuals who just download images or just enjoy fictional drawn pedophilia, like sex offender treatment isn't really beneficial in that sense because it's somewhat of a waste of time and resources. And like with that said, like these sex offender treatment sessions are being wasted on me, and that could be like an open slot for someone who actually needs this therapy, who needs to address their issues, who needs like constant, I guess, not constant monitoring, but constant reaffirmation that they need to be vigilant about their own sexual like perversions, in the sense that they have to not, like not commit hands-on offenses or revert back to their predatory nature. And it's and with that said, it's like we don't even discuss like any like actual real like sexual topics anymore. Like a lot of the discussion that we spend is just on like me focusing on the fact that, like, having been through the system, like I see all the corrupt and unjust things that take place and which are ultimately ignored because, you know, like a lot of the people who have to suffer through this injustice are afraid to, talk out because they have been labeled sex offenders and therefore have to bear this overbearing stigma. So any type of argument or, let's see, any, what's the word again? I'm trying to get, like, any type of argument they pose or any form of opposition is met with ridicule, because like the automatic like response to anyone who is trying to buck the system is just like, oh well, you're of course you're saying that because you're a convicted felon, you still haven't owned up to your guilt or blah blah blah, this and that. Just these frivolous, like, loose arguments which bear no merit whatsoever, because, you know what, like, if you're trying to call out a system for its injustice, you simply get the fact that, like, oh well, you're an ex-con or you're a felon. Like, of course you're going to feel that way. But in reality, like, if you were to look past that comment or to look past that stigma and just like really look into how a lot of these cases are treated, you would see how very unfair and unjust like a lot of this treatment is. And that's like a major point of discussion that I keep coming back to, because, like, having been through the system, I've seen a lot of this injustice. I've seen like a lot of people who have had to have their lives like destroyed, like mostly like not through any fault of their own, just in a lot of cases just through like a unreasonable suspicion which had been placed upon them, and with the fact that the system itself like expects you to bear the burden of proof for your innocence. It's just a really overbearing process, because, like I said it before, like you're treated as guilty, expected to prove your innocence, and it's really hard to prove your innocence when your hands are bound and you're kept behind prison walls. and in that, it's like you're just being pressured into signing like a plea agreement. So in some of these cases I've stated is like through no fault of their own, like all the system really needs is a hint of a suspicion that you've committed an offense, even if there is no real evidence of you having committed an offense. All they need is a quote unquote reasonable suspicion to just lock you up, and then you're expected to just prove your innocence. And in one of these cases, I've come in contact with recently during my most recent incarceration. It was a Native American from, I believe it was Montana, and I took down his name, I took down his number and everything, but again, like all all that stuff was lost because there was just like a lot of paperwork I wasn't allowed to take with me, so ultimately it was thrown away. But anyway, like his story is that he was brought in on rape and battery charge, but the fact of the matter is the rape and battery was committed by another individual, and here this guy he's stuck in a federal system because this rape and battery took place on Indian territory, so therefore like it somehow it falls under the jurisdiction of the feds. So he's stuck in the federal system, having to try to prove his innocence for this alleged rape and battery, but at the same time, the guy who was actually guilty of the rape and battery is already in jail stateside. Now, stateside and federal are just like two different things, but like they have tried numerous times to like point out that like the guy who committed the actual rape is already serving time in a state prison, but he's having to prove his innocence. Shoot, I don't know, like how much more you can actually do. Like hey, you already got the guy who committed this crime. He's in state prison. Like the woman who the victim had already pointed him out, and everything is like it was the victim's boyfriend who committed the rape and battery. But like this other random individual who was in the vicinity is having to pay for that crime. But right now, it's like they have two guys serving time for the same offense, but only one of them is the actual perpetrator, and he's already in state prison. And so, since they already have this other Native American in a federal prison, they're just more or less like trying to have him waited out until he's willing to, I don't know, sign a plea deal for an offense that he didn't commit. Yet they have proof that he didn't commit the offense, and the perpetrator's in state prison. And I don't know how specific, how much more specific you can get to like prove your innocence. Is like, hey, it's like if you take that case and just look up the court case, the specific court case, and like the state side has already like tried this case, and like the real perpetrator is in state prison. It's like you obviously got the wrong guy, like just wasting away in federal prison. And it's just horrendous how it's like you have to jump through all these hoops and red tape in order to prove your innocence, whereas the federal system itself needed little to no evidence just to lock you up in the first place. And it's terrible that it's come to that, and it's a horrible state of affairs that this goes unnoticed. will we allow this to happen because it just goes unnoticed? And I think the federal system itself is just banking on the idea that the shame associated with an alleged sex offense will just like keep people quiet, especially even if they're like wrongly accused or wrongly convicted. It's like they think like, oh, the shame of like being accused as a sex offender will like keep them quiet, because if they keep shouting or like making a fuss, we'll just like blanket their face all over the news and media, which is also something that happens in a lot of these cases, just to like force false confession, which is another instance which happened to another Native American, and again from Montana. But I keep talking about these issues and talking about this subject, and like it keeps coming up in my sex offender treatment. It's like just more addressing the problems with the system than personally, I don't feel like I have a problem, because I'm not out like as a predator actively like trying to um, trying to kidnap or molest children. Like that's not me. So like anything involving my sexuality just like more or less just falls into like a 2D, like 2D realm. So that's one of the things I'm still trying to fight for, is my right to just produce whatever artwork that I want to produce, because that should be my liberty as an American citizen, just and all Americans in general. You should have the freedom and liberty to friggin' draw what you want to draw, because as long as it's in a fictional format, then there should be no issues whatsoever. And that's one of the things I continue like wanting to like I'm striving for, continuing to strive for. And I don't think I'll ever stop trying to argue for that. And the federal process is just so slow, especially when you're trying to right a wrong. The federal system is heinously slow, but it only takes a matter of days for them to like throw you in prison and force a friggin' false false plea deal. But it takes like near about a year to just prove that the system itself was right, or not right. The system itself is wrong. And believe me, the the federal justice system like has become so corrupt that they've compiled like so many like rules and regulations that there's a lot more red tape to prove your innocence than there is to just like wrongly convict you of something. So, like, what I like to do is just get back to drawing what it is I want to draw, and just be free to do that. And I know like a lot of my fans and supporters and followers are just like also waiting in the wings for that day to come. And I'm still working toward it. I still have high hopes, because in a lot of the um, I guess signs, if you will, like a lot of the signs I've been seeing as of late, just point to the fact that like yes, our system is so inundated with rules that there are just so many people who commit felonies every day. So like society as a whole, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in this country, You're either you fall under two categories. You're either a felon or a potential felon. That's it. And because of that, because there are just so many rules and regulations, like the system is starting to get bogged down with all the felons that it's producing due to all of its arbitrary rules and laws. And it's like, yeah, like a whole lot of these rules and laws, like in being enacted all in for the sake of society, and on paper they might sound good, but in practice it's just bumping everything toward an authoritarian or totalitarian system, getting to the point where it's like um, these laws are getting to the point where it's like pretty much saying that hey, you either do what the government tells you to do, you think the way the government tells you to think, or else we're throwing you in prison. And that's just not American in the least, not American in the slightest. And we allowed things to get that way because we allowed ourselves to get distracted, and mostly because like a lot of people are all constantly living in fear of things that might happen, or um, they base like a lot of their existence and a lot of the rules that they enforce on like these outlandish suppositions that bear no merit. So really, it's like we make all these rules and laws just based on fear, and I can't remember who said it, but as I think it was one of our forefathers who stated that, or like a forefather figure in our country that stated that people who want to give up their liberty for security deserve neither liberty nor security. And it's really getting to that point. I might be misquoting it. Like I don't know the quote verbatim, but it runs along those very similar lines. So it's really gotten to that point, especially with like all the censorship that's taking place nowadays. Like I see it constantly, and and in the case of Steam, I'm glad that Steam took the very American thing to do, and just like when it comes to censorship, Steam stated like, hey, it shouldn't be up to us whether or not you get to play or design a game that you want to play or design. Like that's not up to us. That should be up to the individual to make that choice, to make that decision, because America was founded on like freedom of choice and freedom of decisions. And being Steam being like a somewhat of a like an art platform to express yourself by designing a game, or just to enjoy like the art form of like video game design. It's up to you as an individual whether or not to partake in that art form. So Steam admits that it's not up to Steam to like govern like what content is appropriate or what is not appropriate. That's up to all the individuals who want to partake. Just it's up to them. Like it's their freedom of choice. And all these other companies who are just proponents of censorship are like if you look at it, just very are adopting a very un-American ideal when they root for censorship. Now, censorship is great to a point. Like I agree that you shouldn't like just post like very graphic like forms of like violence or sexuality for like any or in all individuals to see. But if as long as you have them like behind like a form of closed door, or just like a like age appropriate websites. Like if you just post them there, then that's fine, and it's up to the individual. Like, hey, if I want to look at like any sexual material, I can go to like a sexual like an adult website or an adult video store. That's my freedom of choice to view like graphic sexual content. So there are appropriate places, times and places for like these things to be released. So censorship should only go that far. Like when censorship is begins to dictate like what people should either like view or not view or produce or not produce, that's when it's just getting too close to an authoritarian or totalitarian state. As long as the production of art or video games or what have you bears no, I guess, victims in its production, then it should be up to the individual, to who wants to either view or play that video game or piece of art. It should be up to the individual to like decide whether or not that's appropriate for them. If they feel like that's not their cup of tea, then just put it away. Like, don't click on it, don't download it, and just move on with your life. Don't spend your like energy like dictating whether or not people should have access to a form of art or video game just based on your ideals. I mean, forcing your ideals onto another individual, you're encroaching on the freedom and liberty of other people. And when you do that, that's just unconstitutional. Like that goes against like the everything this country like stood for and was made for and was built upon. If you find like a form of art or video game offensive, then don't play it. But people who want to like partake in like offensive or obscene material, that should be like their right to do so. Just so long as like the production of obscene or offensive material wasn't produced through any or came about through the I guess victimization of any individual, then like any form of media or art should be it shouldn't be censored or restricted, is what I'm saying. So censorship, in a way, it's just it's just getting too much nowadays. Like I've already felt that pinch through PayPal. Like I had a new account, as I stated before, that I'm sorry, like I'm going on like another legal rant, and I'm just losing focus on my art. So anyway, like as I was saying, like I've already felt that pinch of censorship, and it sucks because like through PayPal, like I've stated earlier in a previous video, that I created a new account specifically for just producing non-pornographic images and selling them online through auctions. And they fell that action falls well within the guidelines of PayPal's like terms of service, like their current terms of service, because like the images I was drawing and selling weren't pornographic in any way whatsoever. They were just, like I said, just pieces like this, just like pinup art. And that's well within like the guidelines or acceptable guidelines and everything. But what PayPal did to my account is that they did a search on my name and found pre-existing pornographic images and came to the wrong, erroneous assumption that I was still producing these images and selling them through their like their PayPal service, which wasn't the case at all. And they took it upon themselves to just like restrict my account, and like they're gonna continue restricting my account until I take that artwork down. But the thing is, like, fucking, I'm not gonna go about censoring myself for your sake. Like, that's you don't get to do that, PayPal. That's bullshit. I'm sorry for all the swearing, but I feel pretty passionate about this. But yeah, it's just it's just something like censorship on that scale shouldn't be tolerated, shouldn't be allowed, and it's just very unconstitutional and violates my rights as an artist to make money off of my own hard work and labor. And it just sucks really to like know that America has become very un-Americanized. And like if you take the time to really look at things and examine them, you start to see it. You start to see how like capitalism in and of itself is starting to become, I guess, weaponized against us. It's like capitalism is great when you want to like earn money off of your own stuff, but then when people in power start to capitalize on human lives, like I stated in earlier videos before, is that they're capitalizing on human lives through um, not only the prison system but through taxes as well. And they're capitalizing on other people's hard work or just capitalizing on people themselves. Like say, like with prison, it's like they throw them in prisons and they give themselves bonuses because they earn like X amount of money per year from like prisoners, and that's how like the prison for profit industry was running for a while. But now it's becoming so unstabilized that private prisons are starting to get shut down because where they were getting their money was directly from the federal government. But that was all for the promise that private run prisons would become self-sustaining after a while, but they've never been able to, you know, uh, I guess, come through on that promise. So the government cut their funding and like which resulted in a lot of private run prisons and halfway houses to be shut down because halfway houses are privately run also and also relied upon the government backing. And with that like starting to go south, like the prison system itself is starting to is beginning to falter. But anyway, like as I was getting to before, is like yeah, that's a form of like capitalism in its like evil form, and I'm starting to see it again with the whole issue of net neutrality becoming a topic for debate because the government is talking about ending net neutrality, and I see that as a like they purport or like they well yeah they purport that it's all for the sake of like like another form of censorship. And yeah, like on the face, like yeah, it can be seen as that, but like if you step back to really like think about it and ponder about it for a little bit, like it's just another form of just not only capitalizing on human lives, but this is a form of capitalizing on the Constitution itself, on capitalizing on constitutional rights. Because in ending net neutrality, they're going to start making you pay like higher fees and services in order to have that connectivity, to have access to like the internet and just to express yourself and to make that somewhat of a money market for themselves to capitalize on your free speech. It's just what the hell is going on here? And they're going to continue to utilize fear in order to get their way, like arguing it's for this or that. It's for your own safety, for the like for your children's protection. This and just like a whole lot of just outlandish claims, just hoping to like again capitalize on your fear in order to get a lot of their overbearing like rules and regulations set into place just for them to make more money. Yeah, I think I should just put all that talk on the sidelines for a little bit and just focus on my drawings. Because, yeah, how many did I? Oh, shoot. I've just been working on this one for the past, like, over 30 minutes. Okay, so sorry for that extended, like, legal rant. I'll shut up now. But I don't know if you want to hear like more of my thoughts and ideas about the whole corrupt legal system and how it can be fixed. Like, just go ahead and leave me a comment or reach out to me any way you can, maybe through my DeviantArt or through one of the other websites that I post in the descriptions. Just feel free to like just send me a question or just like let me know like what you'd like to see more of or less of. I don't know. But yeah, don't be afraid to just tell me your thoughts and ideas, because right now it's just all about me just talking to myself. I'm so lonely right now. Okay, next one. Okay. Try to focus on the drawing. Oh, I think one of the points I was trying to get at is like through these sex offender treatment sessions, which aren't even about sex offender treatment anymore, more or less. Well, we still talk about it from time to time, but for the most part, I'm just like so focused on all these legal issues and the corrupt nature of the federal judicial system itself. And my therapist just stated like I need to expel all this energy. It's like I got this massive talent that I have on display right now, and like this passion to like right these wrongs, to expose the system for what it is, expose what the government's doing, and like how it's going about it. And if I have this tool at my disposal and this passion to just like make things change, I should go about like making like PSAs and just making like somewhat not well, I guess in a way like they would be documentary documentary little PSAs, because it would be like displaying like what I had experienced myself as a prisoner going through the prison system, and just coming to terms or just coming to the realization of like all these egregious truths that are being perpetrated right under society's nose, under the thin facade of protecting society, when in fact like America is just systematically starting to enslave society. Because yeah, they're systematically like employing like more control, more governmental policy in order to like become more of an authoritarian state, and it's going for the most part unnoticed. And my therapist tells me, he's like, just start making videos, start making animations, start making cartoons, just illustrating all of this, illustrating everything you've seen, everything that you've learned, everything that you feel. Just put that passion to paper and put it on YouTube, put it on the big screen. Just get it out there, and like I think in a way like it'll help me like recover through all of this because the whole having to suffer this whole unjustified event is just very stressful in and of itself, and it's very hard to reacclimate to society when society doesn't, or the system doesn't treat you as a member of society in the first place. And with all these rules and regulations, I am pretty much a secondary class citizen. Now, like my therapist tried to spin it in a way, like saying like, oh, well, you held up to a higher standard, and you're like more is expected of you, this and that. So you could think of it as that. It's like, no, I can't think of it that way because it's like everyone else is pretty much free to do this and that, and just there are just so many restrictions placed on me. Like I don't see myself as being held up to a higher standard at all. I see myself as being treated as a secondary class citizen because there are freedoms that I am no longer allowed to have due to these overbearing fears of the supposed potential I myself have as a labeled sex offender or ex-felon now. So the whole aspect of being like held up to a higher standard, like no, that's not me at all. I'm being treated as a secondary class citizen, like not only me, but like all other sex offenders who are convicted of the same offense are under that same umbrella. And it's very difficult when the system expects you to be fixed or whatever through like these various forms of punishment, and it's still unconstitutional because yeah, like having to live as a secondary class citizen and calling it for what it is just very punitive. And I believe that I've already served my time, like I've more than repaid my debt to society, and like my debt to society shouldn't have been so overbearing because like as I stated before, like in signing a guilty plea, I signed to more guilt than I was actually guilty of, and that being like the whole possession of pornography affecting interstate or foreign commerce. Like, well, yeah, like given the whole possession of child pornography was there, but the whole effect of interstate or foreign commerce was neither here nor there because no transaction had taken place for my downloading of illegal imagery. And that's like one of the overbearing like conclusions or erroneous conclusions that the federal system like always refers back to is that from possessing these images, you like must have expended some form or amount of money in order to have these images, but that is rarely the case. I have never come in contact with a case where someone who is in possession of child pornography or alleged child pornography had ever paid any amount of money whatsoever. And I already like explained in previous videos how like the use of a computer or the use of the internet doesn't equate in the effect of interstate or foreign commerce, because I explained how the only way interstate or foreign commerce can be affected by the possession, receipt, or distribution of child pornography is if there was a direct financial transaction for those actions. But like again, in the majority of these child pornography cases, that is not the case. But that's what the crime is possession, receipt, or distribution of child pornography affecting interstate or foreign commerce. And to affect interstate or foreign commerce, the child pornography in question would have to travel through interstate or foreign lines through commerce as a commodity. That being like the commodity has to have been purchased or traded for with value to either possess, receipt, or distribute. But with the no expenditure of money for the possession, receipt, or distribution of these images, there is no effect in a state of foreign commerce, because the imagery in question isn't a commodity. It isn't. It isn't purchased, and therefore, like, it isn't a form of commodity. It can't be argued as a form of commodity because it's just simply imagery that's floating around there for free on the internet. So yeah, if you guys want to continue this topic of discussion or debate, just feel free to drop a comment or give me a, like, send me a note or something, and just like, don't be afraid to ask questions, like, and that's how we're gonna get past this. That's how we're gonna, like, undo, like, the overburdening of the system itself. That's how we're going to break the stigma and just end this runaway train of just this conveyor belt of convictions that the federal judicial system is concerned with. They're not concerned about, like, ruining your life. They're not concerned about the victims, even though they purport to be. That's really not the case. And I could say that because, like, as I stated in the previous video, is that, like, yeah, they parade the victims out in front of you as a defendant and, like, stating that their suffrage is all your fault. But in all actuality, like, that's just overblown garbage. Simply because, like, your possession of these illegal images doesn't expose that victim to, like, being molested again. And they say that by either downloading or, like, sharing these images, like, what's the word they use? Perpetuates the cycle of abuse. It's just ridiculous. I mean, like, the only people who are actually perpetuating that cycle of abuse or trauma is the government itself. And I say this because in a lot of these cases, it's the federal system or the arresting agents who distributed the child pornography in the first place to attain their arrest. Now, that used to happen in, like, a lot of these, like, cases. I don't know if it happens that much nowadays, seeing as how there was a recent court case that stated, like, hey, look, you guys, hey, you can't break the law in order to enforce the law. It's just something that isn't done. That's just pretty much entrapment. So I'm not sure if that happens as much nowadays because of that case law. And in other ways, like, that, that it's the government itself that perpetuates the cycle of trauma, is because they, when they arrest someone for downloading child pornography, they reach out to the victims in order to gain a victim statement. And as I stated before, like, I've read, like, several victim statements in, like, numerous cases that I've come across, like the people who are willing to share their court documents. A lot of these victims just want to get on with their lives. They want to put whatever happened in the past, put it behind them and just leave it for good, never be reminded of it. But yet the government feels it's necessary to, like, pull them back into that world, to pull them back into that reality, and, like, say, like, hey, this guy downloaded your, like, child pornography. In some cases, like, oh yeah, he downloaded your child pornography, but after we gave it to him in the first place. It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Anyway, yeah, it's like, they're the ones who are perpetuating that cycle, because they constantly remind these victims of their former abuse because they feel it's necessary to get a victim statement. Now, to put that in somewhat of an analogy, is like, if a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? You know, does the sound exist if like no one is there to experience that? So to put that in these terms is like, if someone were to download an image, a single image of child pornography, would the victim be aware of it if not for the federal agent um, making apparent to the victim? So, like, if these victims just want to be left alone, just leave them alone. And in another way, like I stated in a previous video, is that the government is pretty much profiting off of the victims themselves. Is that, like I stated before earlier, is that no one really pays for or purchases these child pornography images, but after you sign that plea deal, like, the government will have you pay a victim. What's the word? I can't remember now. Victim statement. Restitution. Victim restitution. Now, I've seen in like a lot of paperwork, like people with little to no money whatsoever, who never spent any money on these legal images. Like, they'll have just like meager funds or whatever, but like the court will see fit to just charge them like tens of thousands of dollars for their possession of these images. And in a lot of these cases, these guys are just forced to just pay that out. Pay tens of thousands for victim restitution. Now, say like a guy has to like give $100,000 in victim restitution for the sake of the victim, but in all actuality, the victim sees very little of that money because the victim only gets 20% of that $100,000. The $80,000, the rest of that $80,000 goes into the government's pocket. So the people who are really like perpetuating the abuse or the trauma is the government. And the people who are profiting off of child pornography is, again, the government. But I don't know if they're like still actively doing that, like actively giving child pornography to like unassuming people online just to gain that arrest, to get that victim restitution, just to line their own pockets. I mean, like, when you start like looking at all these facts and like these tidbits, and like just taking a step back and looking at it as a whole, you really start to see how corrupt everything really is. And they do it behind like a thin veiled facade of, oh, this is all for the victim, this is all for the protection of society's children at large. We're like, no, bullshit. You're doing it to like just bully people into signing false plea agreements and just lining your own pocket with that like ill-gotten money. Like, come on. It's time to start owning up to those facts. The federal justice system. It's like, you've been playing this friggin' game from the get once it started back in the 70s, actually. And after a few decades like of this heinous practice, like, I think people are starting to come around to the fact that, hey, like, this some bullshit is like really going on. Because, like another like tidbit or statement of fact is that people who serve prison time for just the mere possession or receipt or distribution of online child pornography just serve way more time than anyone who actually commits a hands-on offense against a child or another individual. So people who commit hands-on rapes and molestations see little to no prison time, whereas someone who, again, like just downloads child pornography just spends like decades of their time in prison and has to spend an exorbitant amount of money because of that offense. And it's just, I think as long as we continue to have these discussions, these debates about the issue, and just like look at it for what it actually is, instead of giving into the fear and the stigma and the sensationalism of it all, we really get to the bare bones of like why the system is the way it is. And it's that way just for the system's sake, even though they purport that they are doing it for the sake of the victims and the sake of society's children. That's just thinly thinly like layered like disguise, and that's really not the case at all. But it's an easy argument for them to constantly fall back on, and like no one will argue against it because they don't want to be seen as the individual who hates children or who's for sex abuse, and that's what they'll be accused of when they start questioning the system. Now, I don't hate children. I'm not for sex abuse. I just want to get back to just drawing obscene amounts of obscene pornography. And as an artist, that should be my freedom. But now that my freedom is being heavily encroached on due to baseless suppositions and a false system with like false convictions based on just overbearing ideals, and that's it. It's just based on ideals and has no factual merits whatsoever. It's just a very corrupt system. And when you try to point it out as corrupt, you get accused of like, oh, so you're for abusing kids. And like, no, that's not the case at all. The case is that you're a very corrupt system and you won't own up to it. But you know what? It's time that we continue this. We should continue this discussion and like keep it up for debate and really question like the status quo as it is right now, because like as it is right now, it's like it's horribly corrupt. And like one of those reasons being is that I've stated in previous videos is that people working in government or for the judicial system bear no accountability for their wrongdoing. And it's only when we can hold these people accountable that we'll start getting to see like real justice get implemented in our system, our judicial system. Because right now that is far from the case. If you want me to stop talking about legal stuff, just leave a comment. Oh man, I can't help it though. I'm just so passionate about it. It's like, oh, the system is corrupt. The system is wrong. Why can't anybody else see it? Oh, you're all distracted by memes and reality television and oh, and dirty politics and like it sucks. Like for me, like I feel like it's so obvious and it's just like it's just right there, but like people are just so blind to the fact because they're just so happy in their ignorance ignorance is bliss, and bliss is memes and reality television, apparently. But at any given moment, anyone can get plucked out of the system and have to suffer the same thing a lot of us have gone through, and like a lot of what I've gone through. But that's something that I'm trying to prevent. It's like I don't want any more people to have to live to live under this unjust umbrella. I don't want people to have their freedom threatened for the sake of a wrong conviction or just a vague suspicion. It's like I don't want that. I'm trying to change things for your sake, not just mine. It's for you. Maybe like, that's why I should run for president. Yeah, I should run for president. I would expel like a whole lot of these laws. Like for me, like I feel like a lot of these laws are based on like intense religious belief, and that in and of itself is unconstitutional or just not proper by like American standards, because this America was founded on like many like ideas and like policies, and like one of those being that there should be a separation of church and state. And when you start making a whole lot of frivolous laws based on your ideals, and if you're like and you base those ideals heavily on like your religious beliefs, it's just you're forcing people to live by your personal ideals and beliefs just based on your religion, and that's not proper. Now, I do believe like certain laws are necessary, like they go back to like many religious beliefs, but they're just common aspects of just how to live your life. Like you don't murder, you don't steal, you don't cheat, and those just pretty much go without saying. But for me, like I think I would get rid of a lot of these laws because they're just based on just like I said, just like ideals that are just seem to be religious based, such as let's see, prostitution, for instance. It's like, yeah, I would make prostitution legal. In other countries, like prostitution is legal, and like they have systems put into place where it's like prostitutes have to have like a yearly or monthly, I can't remember, but yearly or monthly like a health exam to make sure that they're healthy and fit for their prostitution duties. So like, why not adopt a system like that? I mean, like to criminalize prostitution and saying it's for the sake of the sanctity of marriage is like, that's just faith based. That's just religion based. Like if you're going to make laws based on marriage, I mean, like that's just ridiculous. Like a whole like marriage thing should be like handled in like an in-house thing. I mean, that's like that's the couple's deal. So if a couple wants to get divorced over a matter of prostitution, that's their own private endeavor to take upon themselves. But if a couple wants to engage in prostitution, like pay for like a prostitute or gigolo to have a three-way or a multiple partner event, just like that should be their deal. I'm not like one to take that away from people. So like if I were put into power, like that'd be one of the laws I'd get rid of. Another one would be like these laws like governing like these drug laws. I would decriminalize pretty much all forms of drugs and legalize like all forms of naturally grown substances such as marijuana and shrooms and maybe like even cocaine leaves. Hey, if it grows naturally, just legalize it. Because you can't you can't you shouldn't be able to enforce laws on nature itself. You can't subpoena nature and like, hey, nature, stop growing these marijuana leaves or these coca leaves or coca plants or whatever, and or these mushrooms, these hallucinogenic mushrooms. Like we're the government, and we're gonna subpoena Mother Nature for growing these illicit substances because um, they go against our faith and beliefs. Yeah, no, you can't do that. You can't subpoena Mother Nature. So why bother like making laws against Mother Nature? So like I would legalize like all forms of natural drugs, herbs and supplements and whatever, and I would decriminalize like chemical drugs. So say like methamphetamine or whatever. And I know like I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback, but you know what? If people want to get high, that should be their freedom and liberty to do so. And the only reason I feel like a lot of these drug crimes just go crazy are because people are very desperate to get that high. They want to get that fix, and they're going to go through any means necessary to do so. So you know what? Why make it hard for them? Just fucking make these like legal legal drug houses for these people to just do these drugs recreationally, so they're just out of the way in a safe environment and are just capable to just get that high without having to murder, steal, or cheat in order to get their fix. And I believe by doing this, it would relieve like a lot of tension that we have at the borders, because the issue with the borders, especially with the southern border, is that we have all these let's just say it, we have all these refugees who are trying to flee like uh, a very destabilized state in the south because of all these drug cartels. And these drug cartels, they get their major form of income from the manufacture and sell of these drugs. And the only way they get that profit is because these drugs are illegal. So using prohibition as an example, how did a lot of these gangsters come into power? It was because of prohibition. They came into power because of like all the bootlegging and like illegal sell and manufacture of the alcohol that they were producing and selling. And if not for prohibition, would these gangsters have come into the notoriety that they are nowadays? And once prohibition was abolished, like it wasn't that much of an issue as it was when prohibition was enacted. So using having that in your having that state of reference or form of reference in mind, wouldn't it be a safe assumption to state that like by decriminalizing and legalizing a lot of these drugs, these illicit substances, you would take a lot of the power away from these drug cartels? Would they begin to collapse in on themselves? Would they dissipate completely? Would you be able to form like a uh, legal like a state environment in which like the manufacture and production of drugs, sales and drugs, if it were made legal, that wouldn't that produce like a lot of jobs? You know, so like say like the government made drugs legalized and solely for the purpose of like medicinal qualities and whatever, or for like these legalized drug houses where people can get their fix and high just by legal means, not having to go through such extraneous lengths to get that high. Like if you legalize this whole process and you would make all these jobs in which all these people who were um, um, all these people who are in this criminal empire are now, I guess, inducted into this like a legalized system. It's like they wouldn't have to I guess, scrimp, save, murder, or kill in order to make their living anymore. And like the whole morality of the thing, like let's just take morality out of it. You know, like if you don't want to do drugs or have your family do any drugs, then that's your deal. You know, like you just abstain from drugs if that's not your thing. If you don't want your children doing drugs, just be there as a parent to teach them and mentor them into like the to adhere to your wishes. You know, like if you don't want your children doing drugs, just really stress to them that that's something that you don't want them to partake in, and give them the reasons why. And like how it's handled nowadays is like, hey, don't do drugs, kids. Is like, why? Because it's illegal. Well, why else? Like, what's the cause? Because it's bad. Drugs are bad, kids. Don't do them. And that's the only frame of reference you give them. I mean, like in in many ways, like youth is going to be curious, they're going to be rebellious, and they're just going to go ahead and do it. But if you're clear and concise about what it is you want them to do, you know, if you're like a very straightforward and honest parent, and just like tell them and just like be honest, like just you don't want them to do drugs and for such and such reasons. And especially if like you yourself partook in drugs, just like tell them like, hey, I had a bad experience, my life was shit because I did drugs, and that's not a life that I want for you. I did this, I did that, I I blew guys in a stall. And that's not like a life I want for you because you're precious to me, and blah blah blah, this and that. Like you got to be forthcoming and honest with them. If you don't want them to do something, you just have to note your fears, your experiences, and just have it be that. And with a legalized drug system, like fucking the freedom of choice should be up to the individual. It's something that shouldn't be dictated or mandated by the government or state whatsoever. And that's like a lot of things that I myself, as a leader, would like to like do is just take down a lot of these like overbearing laws which have no real like merit, or if they encroach on constitutional like on, if they encroach on constitutional rights and such. So if I were in charge, I just sweep away a lot of these overbearing laws and just like just have the freedom of choice be up to the people. I think we have like a lot less crime too, in fact, because a lot of these crimes, like when you think about it, I think a lot of them are just committed on desperation of just like not having like that high, or just not having enough, and just especially with these drug cases, like you have all these people who are just willing to go through all these like super extraneous means in order to gain that fix. And when it's all said and done, like fucking, like why do we make it that difficult? Like if someone wants to get high and like have their life come to shambles, like maybe that should be their decision, that should be their choice, that should be their freedom to just like become like become an addict or something like. And if they want to get fixed up, then there should be like appropriate facilities to do so. I mean, we put so much time, money, and effort on punishing for crimes instead of treating people for their addictions and what have you. It's like we put more focus on society, as American society, like we gear it more toward punishment rather than treatment. So like by giving people that freedom of choice, like whether or not to just become an addict or not, is like that should be up to the individual. So like me, like myself, like I wouldn't want to do any like harsh drugs whatsoever. And if it were legalized, like I'd still abstain from it. Because you know what, like I did try marijuana like a long time ago, and I did have a bad experience, but mostly because like later on I found out it was laced with a harder substance, and I wasn't told about it, and it was simply because that person who laced it simply wanted to see what would happen to me, and that guy sucks. Because I had smoked weed beforehand, before that bad trip, and like really nothing much had happened to me other than just like being lethargic and having like a small case of the munchies, and that was it. That was it. I thought like this next experience would have been more of the same, and I was more or less just kind of like looking forward to it, and like, hey, I've done this before. Like, they just got really like mellow, tired, and just wanted to snack on stuff. But unbeknownst to me, it was laced, and I smoked it. Had a really bad trip. I had a bad experience, and I've just abstained from it. I've tried it again since then, and just it was just more of the same. Like ever since that bad trip, I haven't been able to recover from it from subsequent attempts to try marijuana. So I think from now on, it's just something that I won't even um, entertain the notion of partaking in. Even like walking down the street nowadays, like now that marijuana is legal here in Vegas, I smell it and just I'm afraid of getting a contact high because I don't want another bad trip. It's sad. It's very sad. So thanks to that jerk who laced the stuff and just didn't tell me about it as for the sake of his own amusement or his own like little secret experiment, is just you suck. But yeah, like after I legalized it, like I still wouldn't take part in it, and I wouldn't take part in the prostitution either. Believe it or not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Keep talking, you jerks. I know a lot of you saying, "Oh, pfft, yeah, right. He'd totally get a prostitute like right off the bat after he made it legalized." Like, no, that wouldn't be the case, because I'm an individual who can't have just frivolous sex, who can't have just a casual encounter, so to speak. It's like if I'm going to relate to somebody on that level, it has to mean something. I'm just that old fashioned, I guess. And so, like that being the case, believe it or not, since I haven't had sex since coming out of prison, this time or last time. And how long has it been? September of 2013. Shoot, how long is that? 15, 16, 17. Oh my God. It's been almost 5 years. Oh, I am so backed up. Oh, geez. But no, it's like that's just how I am. It's like I need to feel that like I guess connection in order to like be willing to partake in a sexual encounter. And so like a sexual encounter isn't just going to be something like a one-off or just something frivolous that I just do at like at a gas station or something. Like, no, that's not me. That's not my type of character. And I'm not like trying to like be high and mighty or anything. It's just not how I'm wired. Like I know like people like have casual sex here and there, and I look at them with like an air of jealousy, because that's something like I just, it sounds appealing, but it's just something that I can't partake in, because I need, like I said, to feel that emotional connection. I want that, I guess, that sense of love, so to speak. Ugh, I'm so lonely. But yeah, it's been like nearly 5 years, and huh, I guess you can see me as somewhat pathetic or whatever, but you know what? Like it's just who I am. So if I were to legalize prostitution, like prostitution is something I pretty much I'd probably stay away from, unless I got really really drunk, and I don't think that's gonna happen like anytime soon, because like I was a severe alcoholic many years ago, and I don't think I'm gonna go back to that ever. Like, granted, I do have a few occasional beers every now and then, but I don't drink to get plastered anymore. I don't drink to hide from my problems. I don't drink to hide from myself because I can't accept myself anymore. It's like I, after becoming sober and going through like the drug treatment program, like I learned like a lot of like personal things about myself, and like a lot of these things I just having to come to terms with, and just having to become comfortable with it, because there are things that you can change and things you can't change, and the things you can, you know, like the whole like drinking, like you can overcome that, but things that are just really just ingrained in yourself, like your sexuality, your preferences, is just something that you can't alter, and that's something that I've had to accept. And by accepting it and just acknowledging these things, like oh, by accept, excuse me, I'm having issues with my stomach. I think that's because I haven't eaten yet. Have I? No, I haven't. What time is it? I should probably eat something soon. But anyway, like when you come to accept things about yourself and just learn to acknowledge them for what they are, you get to, I guess, gain control of it. You can better maintain it, so to speak. So when you're just willing to commit to be aware of who you are as an individual, and gain that level of acceptance, stating that, okay, this is who I am. I can't hide from this anymore. This is something I have to accept in myself. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep running into the same issues as I have in the past. You know, that's when you gain like, I guess, moment of clarity, or um, you're able to manage it better, because you're not trying to ignore it anymore. It's like it's a problem, or issue, or like just something about yourself. Like when you try to ignore it, when you try to bottle it up, it gets out of hand. It can overwhelm you. But when you learn to accept it and learn to live with it and just like acknowledge it, and just let everyone know like who it is you are and what it is that you believe, like, and they come to accept you for that, is just it becomes easier to um, manage. I just totally had a brain fart. I can't stop thinking about eating now. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, if I were to become president, or just take control, or just yeah, there are a lot of like laws I would take off the books, or just a lot of things I would change, just for the sake of like, like because like I stated in previous videos, that we are so inundated with rules and laws that society itself, like you're either one of two things: you're a felon or a potential felon, and that's it. There's no in between. And depending on whether or not, like the feds want to like throw you in a prison, all they have to do is like have like an air of suspicion about you, look into your life, and then just like have a laundry list of things to just incarcerate you for. And that's something that shouldn't be tolerated, and it never should have gotten to this point. So me as a leader, I would just undo a lot of these laws, and I would enact a policy to have the people in government have their impunity stripped away, and just enforce a policy of accountability. If you're found to be using your position of authority for corrupt purposes or means, then you're going to have to pay the penalties, just like everybody else, if not more so, because you're held up to a higher standard. It's like you were entrusted with this high point of authority, and for you to use that for corrupt means, like I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to go to prison for a very long time. Depending on the offense, you may even actually have to get executed. Hey, it's harsh, but you know what? That's the ship I'm gonna run. Like if you're a government official, you're found to be breaking the rules, the laws, or the Constitution, you're gonna have to suffer those repercussions for your actions, because you know what? Yeah, you were held to a higher standard, and you should have known better. And I'm going to enforce like a no tolerance policy on that too, because like I think people in government and people who are working in the judicial system and people who are in forms of authority all around, like, get away with too many corrupt offenses, simply because of their position of authority. And I've seen that happen in like a recent case. Like there was a case, I think it was on the East Coast, where a judge was convicted of possession of child pornography, and he was given a very light sentence of probation, simply like because like the judge who was prosecuting him like stated like, oh, because of his advanced age, we're not going to put him in prison. But like, oh, come on, don't give me that BS. That was a professional courtesy, because I've seen like very geriatric people who are getting by in prison on wheelchairs and walkers, who are very incapable sometimes of just like helping themselves, and who have to have other inmates help them get from one place to another because they're so old. It's like, if you have people in prison like that, like, why are you giving this guy a pass? Like this, like, judge who is so advanced in age, you don't want him to make him suffer a prison sentence, like, because of his age. Like, no, don't give me that. That's professional courtesy right there. That can't be allowed. You're giving him a pass because he was a fellow judge. Like, don't give me this BS. Like, oh, because of his advanced age. Like, I've seen really old geriatric people in prison who are like fucking in their 80s or 90s, and who are just like falling apart, in some cases quite literally, and they don't get a pass because of their age. Like, why should that judge get a pass because of his age? I mean, that's BS right there. So it's like I believe like if you're just caught with the mere possession, receipt, or distribution of child pornography, you shouldn't have to serve any prison time whatsoever, because you have no immediate victim, and like in major majority of cases, and such as mine, is like there was no exchange of money. But if you're gonna treat people to like a certain extent, you know, just like don't try to excuse it like as like, oh, it's because of his advanced age. Like, no, that's garbage. That's baloney. He did it because you're a judge and he's a judge too. That's some favoritism right there. And yeah, just stick him in prison too. You know, like fucking give him the same treatment that he's probably given like so many other people. It's horrendous. It's corrupt. It's got to stop. And I'm the man who would make it happen. Vote for Johnston. Vote for Blackhorse 2020. Taking America back. How does that sound? I don't know, like maybe I would have a chance at becoming president if enough people voted for me. Like if you're pissed off at the system as much as I am, you know, and like, hey, all my sins and like are and crimes are just I bear all of them. Like I've borne all of them to you guys. Like I have nothing to hide now. And I would run on a what's the full transparency policy. So like every shady like conspiracy theory or corrupt thing like the government may be doing, I'd expose it and it's like, hey, this is what's going on. This is why they're doing it. And these are the people involved. I guess we gotta. Shoot, I guess we gotta execute them now. I don't know. We throw them in prison, lifetime prison sentence. But anyway, yeah, like I'd do that for you guys. Why? Because I have no allegiance to anybody. It's like I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm American. So like, you know, a lot of these politicians and like members in like the government, they have allegiances to like a certain individual or party or just a certain agenda. My agenda is true liberty, true freedom, and true justice for all. You know, I take no payouts. I'm not owned by anybody. So yeah, vote Blackhorse 2020. Taking America back. Anyway, maybe I should have been discussing more about artwork or whatever, but I went on a legal and political rant. If you didn't like it, if you didn't enjoy it, I'm sorry. If you want to hear more, like leave me a comment. If you don't want to hear more, leave me a comment. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, what I should be doing more of. Like what do you want to hear? What are you interested in me talking about? Do you want me to just talk about artwork, or do you want me to talk about like or is it okay for me to like go on these like legal and political tangents? Because I really do feel like it relieves like a lot of my stress, and I feel great in like expelling it and like just revealing a lot of my thoughts and ideals and like my ideas about like how things should be run, and just like revealing a lot of like what I've seen in this corrupt system, like having been through it firsthand, and what I believe can be done about it. If you want to hear like more or less of it, just let me know. If you want me to just keep the artwork videos just strictly art videos, like I'll adhere to that. And if you want to hear more political rants and want me to make specific political rant videos, I'll do so. But you gotta like just let me know and voice your opinion, and I'll I'll do what I can, you know, because like I'm here for you guys, I guess. Like this is my form of income in a way. It's like I produce these videos and I get supported by your patronage on Patreon. I'm not a big YouTube star who can make any YouTube money, so like Patreon's my go-to. And that being said, you know, like I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any like praises, complaints, or issues, or blah blah blah, this and that, just voice your opinion in the comment section below, or you can reach me through the various websites that I'll post in the description section below. If you want to see more of these videos or support more of these videos and support more artwork from me, Johnston Blackhorse, you can visit my Patreon page. Take a look around. I got a lot of free content there. And if you like what you see, just think about becoming a patron of mine. And when becoming a patron, there's like patron-only content that you will gain access to. You know, patron level 1 and patron level 2. Patron level 1, like you'll get like full scale or full resolution scanned downloads of the auctions that I release and some of the images I post. And as a patron level 2, you'll get patron level content, and also you'll get like raw like Photoshop and After Effects and Flash files for like the other things that I draw and animate. And you can take those files and just like mess around with them, do what you will with them, like include them in your own videos if it's an animation or whatever, or tweak the animations to suit your own purposes or needs or style or whatnot. But if you post it, just remember to just like pay credit where credit is due. You can take any form of my art and just like do with it what you will, you know, just download it, color it, and whatever. But yeah, if you post it, just please remember to just link back to me. If you do, that'd be great. If you don't, yeah, like I guess it's whatever. I'm just asking for like a little courtesy. Anyway, if Patreon isn't your thing, I also have a GoFundMe account. If you still want to send me like a few bucks or some change here and there, I'll put the link to my GoFundMe account in the link or description section below. If you want to hear more of my backstory and like what's been going on in my life, I also have an autobiographical blog, and I also have websites on DeviantArt, Fur Affinity, and Ink Money. So if you are a member of those sites, you can also follow me by following the links in the section below. Anyway, I think I made her head too big. That's my own personal critique upon looking at it right now. I think I'll adjust that in a later video. Just do like a little sketch of it, right? Anyway, I hope you like this video. If you do, leave a comment. And if you want to keep up with these videos, like go ahead and hit that subscribe button too, along with all that other stuff that I just rattled off to you really quick. Anyway, I guess I'm going to go make myself something to eat, and I'll check you guys later. Sweet.